So then we are back with the modern understandings from the time of the Second Tabernacle services, where we find in the Aramaic English translation of the word. This translation comes from the original manuscripts of the prophets of the Israelic lineage. So then we can understand the time of the end. As per U.S.A the prophet, we find in a layer of understanding of the spring feast, autumn feast, and in the returning of the cities of the Messiah laid waste for many centuries. We find this section related with the U.S.A, the 61st chapter, where then these understandings are given as layers coming from then Leviticus, the 23rd chapter. U.S.A, the prophet, obviously he was a great prophet of Israel. However, he was then obedient to the Torah, to the instructions. So then we find the 5 Megillas of Moshe then obviously used as a platform or foundation. So then U.S.A, the prophet, was able not only to explain tabernacling, also he was responsible for the explanation of the gentile level. As we understand, the Hebrews, they always maintained the holy instructions related with tabernacling only. However, U.S.A, the prophet, he was also mentioning of the layer of the gentile level in the future, when Gentiles would be included also as servants of the Messiah. Thus salvation was then granted for the Gentiles also, but never outside of the holy instructions of the Torah. So then, since the Creator is very wise every time, always, and never made a mistake, we understand then the layer of understanding related with tabernacling learned in the desert was also used for an explanation of the Gentile level understanding of the time of the restoration period, and also when the Messiah first came, and then Yohanan was in the first holy city. Thus started the relationship of the Messiah and the Gentiles. These levels, obviously, they use the same structure. Thus then U.S.A did explain very precisely during the time of the restoration period what the Creator had intended. Because of the Hebrews, they maintained loyalty only of the areas related with tabernacling. There are many manuscripts of U.S.A lacking. We find this very evident because you find it in the 62nd chapter of U.S.A, you find a takanot, where then the 62nd chapter states, obviously regarding the turbans, but turbans are not used by Hebrews, they are used by the desert people or the sons of Ishmael. So there is a huge takanot, or then the holy instructions modified in order then to promote favorship towards the Hebrews. But we understand, obviously, the sticks of Ezekiel, the 37th chapter, where then there is another takanot. So the Hebrews, unfortunately, they did not consider, because they did not understand the layer of the Gentiles then from the time of U.S.A until Daniel. Daniel, he was then in exile, and he was able to get the layer of the Gentile mostly explained during the time of Daniel. Many years earlier, U.S.A did explain, but those many layers, they were very compact. So U.S.A, the prophet, not only had to point people back to the instructions, but also he had to maintain loyalty to tabernacling, explaining then the political problems of his time, explaining the political problems during the time of the Messiah, where then he was at least from 500 to 700 years earlier of the completion of the spring feast. Not only this, but he explained 1,000 years of the kingship of the Messiah, also then the time of the restoration, and many other layers, where then we find ourselves understanding why then tabernacling and the layer of the Gentiles must be then used under the same structureship. This obviously is very evident. Let's study then, for instance, the understanding of Luke, where then the Messiah explains very plainly from the tabernacling standpoint. The Messiah then in Luke chapter 1:7, he explained very plainly, as it was then in the time of Noah, likewise it will be in the days of the Son of Man. The Son of Man speaks of the Messiah himself when he returns and rescues his people from the holy cities. However, the structure used regarding this section of the Holy Instructions, it is absolutely precise the same structure used for the explanation of the Gentile level. So let's understand. Tabernacling is returning, and the first holy city is then found on the land of Cush. The Holy Prophet, chapter 1:8 of U.S.A, explains very precisely, then on the land of Cush, and woeing then the land south of Cush, beyond the rivers of Ethiopia. So then what was then U.S.A the prophet explaining? It was the combination of the structure of tabernacling during the time of the restoration period, precisely as Daniel the 11th chapter explains. However, not only tabernacling, but it was the relationship of tabernacling and Gentiles during only the time of the restoration period prior of the starting of the autumn feast. The structure is the same. So then, when we evaluate chapter 1:8 of U.S.A, then we find ourselves understanding what it meant. A holy city as per the instructions of Moshe in a desert, where then times and the seasons are then reminded. We are reminding ourselves of the times and the seasons, because then if you read, then the Gentiles would take care of their vineyards and their flocks. If you are a study of the Hebrew language and the Hebrew culture, and if you like to study then the Hebrew language, you must understand during the time of the first tabernacle service, singular, you understand always Hebrews were taking care of the land. Absolutely in no section of any part of the Holy Torah you find Gentiles taking care of the land, because the land must be taken care of as per instructions. You can't mix up animals and plow the field. You can't plow the field every time. You have to have the land rest. And many others related with agriculture, so then no Gentiles were taking care of the land. But because the Messiah then, when he came, he completed the spring feast, then tabernacling went out of Jerusalem, became available for the Gentiles, however, per the instructions of the Torah. So then, when we read U.S.A chapter 1:8, we then have our quest then explained very precisely, because then the Messiah himself, as the living tabernacling, must be continuing, then the Gentiles were included. So then, obviously, when we read the Holy Torah and the instructions and the structure of tabernacling, then the Gentiles included under the same structure. So then, let's understand what's taking place at the moment regarding then the dragon and Baal. When we read the Apocrypha, the Apocrypha is found then mostly on a Catholic Bible. The regular Bible does not have the Apocrypha. But then we are studying these step by step as per the layers of the prophetic. It takes time for people to get used to it. The situation is so profound, not even Israel at the moment have these layers properly perfected as per Yohanan. Yohanan, obviously, he had the instructions perfectly in order. We must understand then the extra writings of U.S.A the prophet. He had other writings. However, the Hebrews, they were very loyal only to tabernacling. And then we find ourselves rescuing, for instance, the understanding of Esther. Esther was not considered holy instruction. Obviously, instruction is used because we find then the Creator himself organizing His people for the return. But it is not directly related with the services of the first tabernacle service. So then the Hebrews considered then Esther a non-valid document. When Yeshayahu the prophet was then writing scripture regarding the time of the restoration period, then because it was not related with tabernacling, the Hebrews then excluded these holy writings from the main topic of the Torah in tabernacling. However, later the Gentiles would be included, but they would be included under the same structureship. So then, with this in mind, let's evaluate what then the Creator, the Son, has said, Yahweh the Son. When He speaks regarding then, and as it was in the days of Noah, likewise wilt be in the days of the Son of Man. He is explaining of Daniel the 12th chapter, when the rock comes from heaven and strikes then the statue. Is the coming of the Messiah, Yahweh Yeshua, Yahweh the Son. So then, He also states, then, the people of this time, a lot of them would be caught outside of the layers of the prophetic. Let's then evaluate this very precisely. And then the Messiah continues, for they were eating and drinking and taking wives and giving them to husbands until the day that Noah entered into the ark, and then the Vesuvius came and destroyed everyone. So what the Messiah is explaining is this. There is a specific understanding of tabernacling, and then at the end, because what he is explaining is precisely what then Metityahu recorded during the 24th chapter of Metityahu. The Messiah then obviously he was taken aside after he went out of the temple. He was teaching over there and explaining the holy instructions via then the holy layers of the prophetic. And then the people, they asked him, what is going to be like then at the end? The Messiah then explained via multi-understandings under the same structure. So let's understand then what went on. And again, as it was in the days of Lot, that they were eating and drinking and buying and having trade and planting and were building. For on the day that Lot then went out of the city, then the Creator Yahweh rained down fire and brimstone from heaven and destroyed every one of them. They were destroyed, they were burnt. Thus, it will be in a day that the Son of Man is revealed. He doesn't state show up, revealed. Revealed is the word in Hebrew, galah. So then, what then the prophet is explaining at the moment, because the Messiah, Yahweh Yeshua, was the prophet promised when Moshe came down from the mountain. He is the promised Messiah. And this is what he said, revealed. Revealed is galah. Galah is related with understanding of the holy instructions via then the layers. Every layer must be completed. So then, when we read the Messiah explaining then the holy instructions while he was completing the spring feast, precisely 490 days ministry, at certain sections of the time, he was explaining very precisely every layer of the holy instructions, and also from the prophets, every layer must be completed. Revealing is the understanding of these layers, but they must have the same structureship. The structure used for the explanation of tabernacling must be used for the explanation of the Gentiles. So let's understand, the Messiah is explaining, for example, in quote, a snapshot of what's coming in the future. We understand this. He explained this during the time of around 5032. 50:31, 50:32. We are in 70:13. So then in 50:31 and 32, during the time of his ministry of 490 days, we find then the Messiah explaining in the future a snapshot of a structure related with tabernacling, because they were asking, how is it going to be then the end? They were explaining, how is it going to be completed then the autumn feast? The end means the vengeance. Because the people of Israel, they were interested in finding how they would receive the kingdom. Thus then autumn feast. Obviously then the Messiah gave an understanding of this structure. These are related with tabernacling because they want to know the end. When is it going to end? So then they would receive the kingdom. But it is not the kingdom of this age. It's the kingdom of the age yet coming. So then, tabernacling's level we understand. What then regarding the Gentile level during the time of the restoration period? How do we understand the structure of the Gentile level from the similitude of what the Messiah has explained then in Luke 1:7 and Matthew the 24th? Must have the same structure. So then let's evaluate then during this time after 2009, where then the 1,000 years of the seat had ended. Then we understand then the chapter of U.S.A. the prophet, where then he included the Gentiles as servants. Servants are related very precisely then in the 6th chapter of Gala or Revelation. The 6th chapter gives you the absolute certainty then the Gentiles would make testimonies on behalf of the Messiah. Simply explain the holy layers related with the Torah and related with the prophets. These give us then a question. How is it then the Gentile level is then explained under the same structure as it was tabernacling? U.S.A. the prophet wrote. The Hebrews did not understand. And the answer for these and the certainty is then obviously the word ciphered of ushkini. Ushkini is a word in Hebrew where you have to understand the content and the context, so then you understand what he's talking about. Because U.S.A. the prophet was explaining of tabernacling outside of Jerusalem. And then 700 years prior of the Messiah's coming, how would they understand tabernacling outside of Jerusalem? Did not make any sense. But U.S.A. was explaining times and seasons during the time of the restoration period. So those holy documents precisely they would explain in step-by-step formation of the time of the restoration period, and we are living during these times. After 09 until prior of 32, then we understand must then take place autumn feast and the restoration period. So then what is the structure of the Gentiles? It's very simple. Where are the countries related with the designing of the trade of the end? Because we must understand also then Ezekiel the 37th chapter. We must clean it up. Why should we clean it up? Because the Hebrews, they had a takanot mixed up with it. The two sticks of authority is one of them for Ishmael, one of them for tabernacling. First son, second son. When you read the 37th chapter of Ezekiel, you find a takanot. There is absolutely nothing to do with the northern kingdom and southern kingdom of Israel. Because you can't understand tabernacling from the Creator's viewpoint when it's divided. When you understand in the same sequence of a layer of the 62nd chapter, then you understand Ishmael. Hebrews, they don't use turbans, they use veil. These give us only an understanding only. Then tabernacling has a structure, and Gentiles have another structure related with the same way of understanding, however, distinct levels. Let's understand. What are then the designers? Who are they? Kingdom of the North, Soviet Union. It was then revived in May. Kingdom of the South is Africa, yet birthing. Kingdom of the East is found in the Apocrypha. It is the dragon. The dragon is a system used for the initiation of this time of the restoration period, preparing the stick of authority for Ishmael. So then, with this in mind, we must then explore how used to be then Ishmael's caravans. How did he relate with the people of his time? They had a direct trade with Ishmael. Ishmael had not a government of himself. It was a direct trade. So this direct trade system of our time, it is obviously strengthening and becoming every day clearer. So then the decentralization of the banking system, giving then the dragon solely control of this age, precisely then after 09 and prior of 2032, then we understand the section related with decentralization of banking, making it virtual, so then there is a direct relation with the dragon. Later, the dragon's system of trade then is given to the Ishmaelites, thus then restoring the stick of authority of trade. Where is the snapshot? We found from the Messiah himself, Yahweh Yeshua, what he said regarding the time of the end. We were given then the snapshot of tabernacling related with the time of the end. Because the question of the people was, how is it then we are going to receive the kingdom? Then we find ourselves understanding what Yeshayahu the prophet mentioned in chapter 1:8. The Gentiles were included as servants. Servants must have the same obligations as then in the Torah. Every foreigner back then in Israel, they had to maintain the holy instructions themselves. When the foreigner would come to the land of Israel, they were abiding citizens of the land as per the instructions. However, the foreigners, they never were in charge of the land, because they were unaware of the holy instructions on how to take care of the land. So the same structure used for tabernacling is the same structure used for the Gentile. Where do we find these then understandings coming? In understanding that the kingdom of the north is precisely explaining what Daniel had explained more than 2,500 years ago. If it's not so, the Torah is available for the explanation. So then, we find ourselves then understanding these layers, so then the world can become more aware of. Because not only these nations, the Kingdom of the North, Soviet Union, Kingdom of the South, Africa, and then the Kingdom of the East, China, but then the rest of the world as Gentiles must be in line with. So the same structure of tabernacling is used for the rest of the world. Where do we find a snapshot? Let's understand then what it means, Bel and the dragon, found in the Apocrypha, mostly known in the Catholic Bible. Regular Bibles, they don't have the Apocrypha. However, it was part of the main codex many years ago. It was removed later. Because again, the Hebrews, they were only loyal to tabernacling, but they did neglect the other areas because they were not aware of the importance of the Gentile level. So then, what do we find as evidence? Let's understand then what Daniel said very precisely, Daniel the 11th chapter, regarding the kingdom of the north. The kingdom of the north is then in a status that must be higher than the first. What do we understand of the Soviet Union? The Soviet Union during the 60s, we find then a superpower of this world. It was absolutely skirmishing around with the United States regarding then bombs and then other types of weapons. But then, many years later, the Soviet Union came down. Thus, the first status of united people of the Northern Kingdom under the Soviet Union. Then the first section of Daniel the 11th chapter was then completed. But then Daniel explained very precisely, then the second status would be higher than the first. So these give us the snapshot we were searching for. However, under the same guideship of the Torah as the structure. Not tabernacling, but the structure from tabernacling on behalf of the Gentiles. So then Daniel, when he was in exile after U.S.A, then we understand what he did. So then Kingdom of the North, we understand as the Soviet Union. How was the relationship of the Soviet Union and the United States? We find then both of them being Baal. The dragon was available during the time. China was there during the time, but it was not evident because the time of deceit was on. However, we had this snapshot of the Northern Kingdom. How are we relating the time of the restoration period after 09, prior of 2032 per the regular calendar, or 7009 until 7032 per the Creator's calendar? How do we understand this snapshot of the Gentiles? It's very simple. We find a reference point during the time of deceit. We find a reference point after the time of deceit. During the time of deceit, you find the Soviet Union active, but then eliminated. Thus the first status of the Northern Kingdom. After 7009, we find then the reference point of the Soviet Union rebirthing itself and becoming higher than the first. Thus, the snapshot then is discovered under the same guideship of the Torah's structure, not as tabernacling, but as Gentile level, explained by U.S.A the prophet when he was explaining the Gentiles will become servants. Thus, then, layers with Daniel, the 11th chapter. So then, what can we then conclude from this study? Because we are not talking about religion. We are talking about facts of the layers of the prophetic. And the Messiah said not a layer of these understandings is going to be left undone. So then, what is the relationship of the Northern Kingdom? The Northern Kingdom, then, we understand they are the superpower, super military power, and responsible for security during the time of the trade of the end. At the moment that the dragon is China, and will be until prior of the autumn feast. Then you find very precisely then the relationship of China and the Soviet Union. Both of them are socialists. But the socialist section of the Soviet Union is going to be higher than the first. What does it make the Northern Kingdom higher than the first? What's the nation, the most powerful nation of this planet at the moment? Is China. The socialism style that makes then the Northern Kingdom higher than the first is the socialism of China. So then the Soviet Union adopts the socialism of China, but then they personalize per the Northern Kingdom, or then the Soviet Union style of protection and government. Then we've discovered what kind of a socialism then both of them are related with. But it doesn't stop there. Then we have to understand Cuba. What's going on in Cuba? During the time of the deceit from 1009 to 2009, or from 6009 until 7009, 1,000 years of deceit. When you read Revelation or Galah, you understand. 1,000 years given to the Messiah, 1,000 given then Nahashatan. During the time of the deceit, we find the first status of the Soviet Union. How was the relationship of the Soviet Union during the time of the deceit? That's where we gather our snapshot, so then we can make a comparison with Luke chapter 1:7 and Matthew the 24th chapter. However, these understandings were explained by Yirmiyahu the prophet, but the documents were excluded. Then, how was the relationship of the Soviet Union? We understand the Soviet Union have a very close relationship with Cuba. So then this relationship is maintained. That's why Cuba maintained itself for so many decades as socialists. However, these understandings of the time of the 1,000 years of deceit related with the Soviet Union is then refurbished and placed during the time of the Restoration period, where then the Northern Kingdom, Soviet Union, and China becoming then socialists, and Cuba is included. So then the military power of the Soviet Union and China and Cuba must be then obviously combined. However, when we read Daniel the 11th chapter, Cuba is not part of the decision making of the Northern Kingdom, but part of. These give us this snapshot. Yirmiyahu the prophet did explain it. He used sections of this globe as regions. However, the layer of understanding was related with his time. You have to understand how to read it, because it's multi-layered. What can we understand during this time? We are expecting then during this next September a revitalization or then a refinement of the banking of the BRICS, where then China the dragon, the Soviet Union, and the G20 countries must come together and find then a point of market that's going to benefit the rest of the world. As we understand, the time of deceit is gone. It was from 1009 to 2009. These 1,000 years of deceit was subdivided in a couple of sections. One of them, 800 years roughly given to the Britons, or Great Britain. 200 years roughly was given to America, United States. When you read Galah chapter 13, you understand then the first and second beasts. You have the spiritual understanding besides tabernacling. Understandably, this section is gone. United States must retrieve from the world's system. They must retrieve their militaries, their navy, and they should return and rebuild their country. Where do you find then a snapshot related precisely with the United States? You find then when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor in 1941. You find in Gerald Nye, a senator from North Dakota, where then he said very precisely a section related with the United States by itself as the second beast. Gerald Knight said very precisely he wished for his country to remove itself from every conflict in the planet, and he said, in quote, starting a war against the arms factories of the United States and placing them under the control. However, these wise words on the Gentile level regarding the second beast was not for his time. However, Yeshayahu the prophet wrote it. So then, what can we expect of this time of the restoration period is the United States retrieving from the world's system. The U.S.D as worldwide means of exchange must end. So then, the monetary system of the dragon then is implemented because it's direct trade, and this is how then Ishmael started his caravans. Later then, when the system is implemented and people, they can download the system in their computers, then they can do direct trade with the dragon, meaning simply precision. Dragon is not a bad name. When you read dragon is simply precision. Try to understand, devil no longer exists. Devil is gone, doesn't exist anymore. You can't deceive people anymore. After 7009 or 2009, the facet of Nahashatan has changed from deceit to precision. It's a time of precision, forced precision. Then later, when the atomic blast is then experienced, he changes again from precision to destroyer. That's how it used to be when Yohanan was in the first holy city until 1009 or 6009. Then in 6009, as we understand, the facet of Nahashatan went to prison. This prison, it was simply a change of facet, because the cities were no more. Then during this time, when we understand the United States and U.S.D must be then eliminated, only used in the country of United States, then the yuan of China becomes the means of exchange. So then the world makes direct trade with China, later direct trade with the dragon, later direct trade with the Ishmaelites. So there are a couple of transitional times. The first transition is then from the time of deceit and time of precision. We've come out of the time of confusion and time of precision. These couple of transitions must respect the Torah's instructions and structures. Thus we understand tabernacling, thus we understand Gentile level under the same structure. One of them being tabernacling, the other being Gentile level. What can we understand of these countries? China is the dragon, precision. United, then the people of the Northern Kingdom, as they used to be, Soviet Union, united, unison, they are responsible for the security of those countries doing trade with China. Brazil is instantly protected by the Soviet Union because we are part of the BRICS. The main question is, what can our country, Brazil, becomes then a help on besides its own government, but then helping the government of precision establishing itself? None other than understanding the importance of minerals. But before we explore then the function of Brazil in this understanding of BRICS, let's understand the previous snapshot regarding then the restoration period Gentile level under the same structureship of the Torah, related with the Gentile level only. What do we understand of this section? Let's then go back to Cuba. During the time of deceit, Cuba and then the Soviet Union were very friends, and they are very friends yet. But there was a reason why Cuba was yet active ever since. Because the relationship of Cuba, or Mr. Castro, or his brother, must re-establish relationship with the Northern Kingdom, Mr. Putin. Putin used to be a KGB agent. He's a highly educated person, extremely smart, so no person can deceive him. What is the importance of the relationship of Cuba and the Northern Kingdom? Because it must have a station near the United States to make sure they retrieve. How do we understand this? Che Guevara was then the medical doctor, or a doctor, and he joined up with Mr. Castro during the time of Fulgencio Batista, and he was an absolute scoundrel. He was a drug dealer, and then Cuba became a vacational resort for the United States, mostly around Florida. The government was a scoundrel from beyond imagination. Then came Mr. Castro from the mountains, and he was able to take over. From then on, became socialist because Cuba won the United States outside of their dealings. Truly, during the time prior of Mr. Castro, Cuba was an island of vacation of the United States. The United States was dominating the island. They had petroleum over there influencing the entire works of the island. They had then plantation under the guideship of the United States, and then Cuba could not be independent. The only way Cuba could have become independent was then via socialism. And that's why they linked up with the Northern Kingdom during the time known as Soviet Union. But it was the first status as Daniel has described. Now we understand the importance of this relationship becoming once again, strengthened. So the relationship of Cuba and the Soviet Union must be re-established, because there is a certainty of then what the prophet has said in the 11th chapter of Daniel. Then the Northern Kingdom would subdue the Southern Kingdom. What do we understand related with the gentile level? We understand Congo is the most rich country regarding minerals in the world. They have vast amounts of minerals, mostly coltan. Coltan is a black mineral where then if you do not have coltan, you can have furtherance on your technological advancements. You have to have coltan for the miniaturization of the components or electronic components. A lot of people in the world, they are ignorant. They use telephones, they use computers, they don't understand. There is a coltan in their equipment. What can we draw from this understanding then? Che Guevara, there was very friends with Mr. Castro, very wisely. They had taken over Cuba because the United States was simply dominated the entire island. Then Che Guevara went to Congo in the 60s. Che Guevara went over there to strengthen the relationship because Daniel the prophet, and both of them did not know. Mr. Castro or even Che Guevara knew what they were doing, but they were related with the gentile level, not tabernacling. We can understand then the events and the flow of events because tabernacling is vivid. And the structure used for understanding of tabernacling is the same structure used for the gentile level. That's why we understand these layers. What is the most important as far as Congo? Firstly then, from Daniel the prophet, he said, "Woe to the land beyond the rivers of Ethiopia." If you understand geographics, you understand then the land of Sudan at the moment, modern Sudan, is where the land of Cush is at. Thus establishing tabernacling there, but then Daniel the prophet mentioned, "Woe to the land beyond the rivers of Ethiopia." If you understand the map and you evaluate what is the country then relevant with the Gentile level beyond the rivers of Ethiopia, DRC, Congo, riches regarding then the time of the restoration period minerals related with the most important technological advancements of our time. Let's understand BRICS. Brazil, Soviet Union, India, you find then obviously China and then South Africa. These are the main players of the Gentile level trade system, the initiation of the dragon system. What do we understand of the woe to the land beyond the rivers of Ethiopia? Is it not then Northern Kingdom friends with Africa? Absolutely, a part of the BRICS. So what do we understand as far as then the Northern Kingdom subduing the Southern Kingdom? Are they going to be at war with each other? No, they are friends. Only gives you an understanding and understanding only. The riches of DRC is for the exclusive use of the dragon. Thus we understand why Che Guevara was there then in DRC in the 60s. So then the riches of technology is exclusively for the dragon. This means then Kingdom of the East, North and South, and then Cuba included. Cuba must be revitalized in its entirety and becoming a place where then they're going to be watching United States and what they are doing very closely. Because U.S.D must end. Only use the United States alone. So then the system of the dragon must be implemented. It's simply a precision term. So then the world can be at peace, at least during this time where people are rebuilding themselves, per the instructions of the prophet. So Mr. Castro has done every situation right until today. Yet he has another task. Revitalizing his relationship with the Northern Kingdom as used to be in the 60s, but then the state of Cuba must become higher with the Northern Kingdom as stated by the prophet. Mr. Castro has done right. So Che Guevara. What can we expect then from the Northern Kingdom? Very simply, the Holy Prophet mentioned regarding then the land of the fierce, the land of the violent. Africans are violent, but for a reason, because countries, they come to their own land and they steal from them. What do we understand then those nations? For instance, Germany, you find Japanese, you find many other countries stealing from Africa. Then we understand the Soviet Union is coming down to straighten out DRC, Congo, where Mr. Kabila is the president. Thus then starting with Mr. Che Guevara started in the 60s. So United States has no choice, because not only the Northern Kingdom and China are unifying their armies, but then Cuba is also with them as per instructions. And the reference point is DRC. DRC is Congo, is the very place then the prophet mentioned, woe to that land beyond the rivers of Ethiopia. You know what this means? Lots of conflict in the Congo until the nations sucking from DRC must remove themselves from. So then China, Soviet Union, Africa, including Cuba, must become again a strength and a strong countries of this world. Mr. Castro has done everything right. He has then strength, He has understanding. He's maintaining then Cuba as it was. He has improved over the decades. But there is great news for Cuba. They are becoming as great and more than what they used to be. So la primera revolución nunca será jamais esquecida. Never again will be then placed aside. Then, because of the strategic place of Cuba, you find in Cancun. What is in Cancun today? Dragon Mart. Then we begin linking up what's going on. Cuba then becomes the watch or the sentinels of these Dragon Mart in Cancun, or the coast watchers, with 100% power to do so. But the Cold War is back. And this time the Soviet Union will to win. Because the prophet has said the status of the second must be higher than the first. Not only this, but then because of this powerful relationship, Dragon Mart absolutely can be expected in the South Pacific, precisely in Australia. They are great people. Australians are great people. They are not like United States. They are not like any other country. Great Britain is the first beast. They have no power. United Kingdom is bankrupt. They have no authority because their time has expired as per the instructions of the prophet. United States then was granted 200 years, roughly, and United States has no more power. The new power is China, Soviet Union, and Africa. And there is a structure and flow of events making this system then available for every country. But then, obviously in September, comes then the revitalization of this period. United States will retrieve from the world. Then we find the sentinels taking care of Cancun, obviously regarding the Dragon Mart. With this in mind, it doesn't take much for a person to understand a Dragon Mart in Brazil, because it's part of Latin America. Easily understandable, we understand obviously in Australia because it takes care of the entire South Pacific. As we understand also in the South Pacific, lots of mining is going on, lots of gold, lots of minerals, where it can be extremely beneficial for the dragon's use, simply precision. Thus, then, the work started by Che Guevara is not only honored, but then used as a symbol of wealth. We should be very grateful for his courage, because it was not easy for Che Guevara going by himself and starting then a revolution then in DRC. He had a great courage. He died, and he, believe it or not, he completed his objective. And today we are understanding via the prophet. Read then very precisely then the understanding of Daniel, the 11th chapter, where then you find woe. Woe to us if we don't understand what then Daniel has said in the 11th chapter, because then the Soviet Union is coming down to kick away those countries sucking the minerals. It's going to make then the Soviet Union greater, Cuba greater, and obviously China greater. So then every person in the planet can do direct trade via computer. Mr. Obama from the United States has no choice. He has to gather his forces from around the world and retrieve either he does via honorable understanding of the instructions, or the Soviets is going to kick them around. If United States does not humble itself, then at some point, and not very far away from today, they will be given an ultimatum. The nations will say on their faces, you have 48 hours to get out of our country, remove your military, remove your people, or else. Because the holy instructions is given us precisely 1,000 years of deceit, where then Great Britain was given 800, United States was given 200, and their time has expired. Let me ask you this: is United States going to come against the Creator Himself? No, they won't. And the power was given to the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union is the new power. Either the United States retrieves by friendly means, or else. United States is bankrupt. United States has no aim. United States has no objective. The country is absolutely not producing. But they manipulate the market of the financial system for their own gain. Thus we understand junkie Ozarks. They have built then a new capital for the United States, and they won't be using it. How are the freighters of this earth doing trade of the end deliver their packages when they have a contract with China? Is the United States going underground expecting a riot? How are they going to honor then the freighters delivering the packages? Let me give you a piece of information. UPS, United Parcel Services, they have every aircraft paid for. They have every van paid for. They have every car paid for. They have every building paid for. And they have every worker paid for. UPS has no debt. They only have surplus. Let me ask you this. Combining with the FedEx has the best price. Combining with the DHL, and the freighters via ocean, the freighters via rail, the freighters via land, do you think United States is going underground under a riot? How are these freighters going to maintain their contracts? United States, absolutely, they do not know what they are doing. And the more they go forward, the more they slaver the world. Because they manipulate the U.S.D. and the nations of the world are paying for. Thus we've discovered they have built the Ozarks for no reason. They have built these fusion centers for no reason. And many other projects paid with humanity's money because of these junky, miserable U.S.D. That's why United States must retrieve and rebuild themselves. If they don't do by friendly means, the Soviets will make them. Please stay tuned. Much more coming up.